A pleasant morning to everyone. I am Brian Dose from the International Studies Department of De La Salle University. At present, I am serving as the Chinese Studies Program Coordinator of our department, and mostly the courses and subjects that I am teaching are those courses related to East and Southeast Asia. I am grateful for the invitation for me to talk in this event, in your event, guys, about Japanese popular culture and Philippine society. In this recorded video, please, before that, please accept my apologies because I cannot be with you synchronously right now because I have work during the weekdays. So, in order for me to share my knowledge about this topic, I decided and I suggested to your program chair, Professor Harvey Gamas, to instead um, record my discussion about the topic. Okay, this topic is a little bit close to my heart because number one, I'm an anime fan, and then second, I also already experienced teaching this topic in our in our class as one elective course offered by our department. So the elective course actually was named as East Asian Popular Culture and Public Diplomacy. So before I go to the specifics of Japanese popular culture and its impact to different societies, please allow me first to discuss the context of how can we locate Japanese popular culture in international studies or international relations. First, let us review our knowledge or basic understanding about power. When we talk about power, we usually associate it to its classical definition offered by Harold Laswell as who gets what, when, and how. However, developments in the literature of political science decided to have a nuanced view about power, and it was divided into three phases. Number one, power as coercion, which is the classical definition of power. A compels B to do what A wants. Second, power as agenda setting. It is it is the capability to condition the environment via institutions, platforms, and other means or regimes in order for a specific actor to get what it wants. And then the last one is what we call power as thought control. And then this last phase of power is the one related to our discussion of soft power because thought control or through propaganda, the basic methodology or basic means on how to practice or wield this power is via attraction and cooptation. In international relations, Joseph Nye, one of our famous scholars, he offered three typologies or types of power that are being practiced by state, although in the latter part of his book, where he offered the concept of soft power, Joseph Nye said that soft power is also possible to be wielded by non-state actors. However, let us look at first at the case of the states. Number one, we have hard power. Hard power is the use of inducements, threats, and we usually approach this as the carrots and sticks approach. The employment of reinforcements and punishments. If you obey or comply to what a specific powerful state wanted, of course, you will be rewarded. If you disobeyed or you did not comply to what the powerful state asked, of course, you will experience punishments. Second, soft power. This is in contrast to hard power because soft power means getting others to want the outcomes that you want via cooptation of people rather than coercion. Soft power is not only about influence, the ability to attract and from attraction to acquiescence. Okay, basically you can differentiate hard power from soft power by simply what? Dissecting it from all methods that involve coercion. However, recent development in the literature of soft power argues that there are some cases that soft power can be used as a tool to obtain hard outcomes. And it's a case-to-case basis. However, the validity of such argument was debatable. Classic examples are the use of soft power to create alliances, and then these alliances, of course, the formation of these alliances might lead to hard results or hard outcomes like war, coercion, um, sanctions, etc., etc. So debatable and case-to-case basis. And then for the last one, Joseph Nye offered this concept called smart power, which is the ability to wield and employ both hard and soft power tools at the appropriate case, appropriate situation, and appropriate time. So basically, based on the discussion or from the thinking or premise of Joseph Nye, how can a state wield soft power? For Joseph Nye, you have the following resources. Number one, culture. Cultural artifacts like language, history, art, music, literature. Next, tourism and destinations. Third, popular culture. And this is the central topic that I am going to discuss today. The role of Japanese popular culture in attracting foreign publics. Next, values. Values like democracy, liberalism, human rights, LGBTQ+, green environmentalism, free market, neoliberal values. In some cases, religious ideals, humanitarianism, and principles of solidarity, subsidiarity, etc. And then the next one is foreign policy. How does the state conduct its business with other states? So it also provides attraction, whether appeasement, peaceful settlement, and promotion of values like multilateralism, um, peaceful means, coexistence, those kinds of values and norms that we have in international relations. So basically, this is lifted from a page from Joseph Nye's book. So you will see here some of a typology of different kinds of power: military power, hard power, economic power, and soft power. So you will see here, look at the rightmost part in the bottom. These are what? These are the venues or the tools on how to practice soft power. So basically, you will see here two concepts. Number one, public diplomacy, and then second, bilateral and multilateral democracy. So let us first discuss bilateral and multilateral diplomacy. When we talk about bilateral and multilateral diplomacy in wielding soft power, we refer on to a government-to-government discussion or interaction. So it refers to the engagement between usually the Ministry or Department of Foreign Affairs of two countries. Yes, through that platform, you can wield soft power. However, one unique characteristic or feature of soft power is the use of public diplomacy. Public diplomacy differs from other forms of diplomacy because the target of public diplomacy is not the government of another state, but the foreign public of another state. Bilateral and multilateral, it's a government to government engagement. Public diplomacy, it's the government to foreign public engagement. Based on that premise that wherein public diplomacy is an engagement between a government and directed towards a foreign public, we can see here that Japanese popular culture can be wielded as a tool to enhance a specific government's image or to project values and to project the thought or propaganda for a specific outcome as a specific state aims to achieve. And through the application of Japanese popular culture or popular culture in general, there is a consensus or a debate, let's call it a debate among scholars whether how effective and efficient the use of Japanese popular culture in achieving Japanese national objectives. To understand Japanese popular culture, let me discuss this framework called the structure of East Asian popular culture offered by Chua, Beng, Huat, in 2012. For Chua, the evolution of popular culture, trade, exportation, and importation in East Asia must be contextualized on the economic developments that happened in the region in the 1970s to the 1980s. Remember those economic concepts or those developmental concepts that you discussed in your previous subject. Remember the East Asian miracle, the Japanese flying geese model, the developmental state model, or in some scholars, they call it the state-led capitalism. For Chua, the development of popular culture and its exportation abroad is located and is located on the implementation of these economic policies. According to the historical analysis of Chua, Japan has the most established television industry in the 1970s to the 1980s. However, it was South Korea who replaced Japanese popular culture export by the end of the 1990s. During these 3 decades, from the 1970s to the 1990s, Japan and South Korea have a big mass of consumers from the ethnic Chinese, regardless whether they came from the mainland, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Hence, this ethnic Chinese base of Japanese and South Korean popular culture, called Pop Culture China by Chua, served as what? Served as a consumer base, that served as the first destination of this popular culture exports. So you will see here, I have two diagrams here. Number at the top in the rightmost part is the flying geese model. So for Kaname Akamatsu, in your lessons on development, international development or international political economy, for Kaname Akamatsu, the East Asian economic miracle happened with Japan as the lead goose. And then, similar to the metaphor or to the imagery of the flying geese model, the strongest bird or the strongest bird serves as the leader, that this bird shares the energy and aims to carry those birds who are not capable of flying like this leader. So such was the same imagery used to explain the East Asian economic miracle. So it was Japan who served as the lead goose, and then through the outsourcing and the through outsourcing and the spread of Japanese foreign direct investments in other parts of East and Southeast Asia, there came its successors, following the lead goose, which is South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, and then followed by China and the other Southeast Asian states like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. So such was also the case with, as I have said, such is also the case with East Asian popular culture. Japan was the forerunner. However, it was replaced by South Korea, and then South Korean popular culture boomed, and with its continuous production, other challengers are now rising, like Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, mainland China, and the latest one that we have right now since the pandemic is Thailand. So let us look at the production and distribution of media products or media artifacts in Japan. 95% of TV programs in Japan are produced domestically, particularly in the 1970s to the 1980s. Actually, similar to the to the flying geese model, wherein Japan has the advantage of this technology that boosted its production, that improved its national economic performance. In the terms of East Asian popular culture, Japan also has a highly developed TV sector. And even right now, you can witness it with the quality of different animes that are trending right now. Classic examples are my favorites. Kimetsu no Yaiba and Attack on Titan. So yeah, so Japan has a highly developed TV sector, and its media industry has a financial capital that can carry the cost of expensive productions and stage expensive concerts. These two features position Japanese pop culture industry almost exclusively as an exporter, actually the lead exporter. In fact, from the 1980s to the late 1990s, Japan became or had or obtained this exporter status of popular drama, exported to South Korea and the pop culture China or the ethnic Chinese base. And by the late 1990s, the Japanese market became the largest importer of Korean TV dramas. Why? Because there was in the late 1990s there are different crises that struck Japan. Number one is the decline of demand for Japanese popular culture like anime, manga, and dramas. And then second, late 1990s. So you have the Asian financial crisis. So in order for the media industry of Japan during this time to cut costs, some of them imported Korean TV dramas because they are cheaper instead of producing their own play or producing their own dramas that will cost them more. Okay, the exportation of Japanese popular culture, particularly those shows, anime, manga, and dramas, were viewed as a platform to present Japan on a positive light, to present Japan on a to present Japan on a good image, particularly in terms of these attempts to at least not really erase, but to dilute its negative image caused by its activities during the Second World War. However, the problem is that there is no uniform interpretation or there is no uniform outcome among viewers who consume Japanese popular culture products. Some will interpret it on this way. Like, for example, an episode of an anime will interpret it on this way, another will interpret it on this way, on another angle, etc., etc. Hence, we need to understand it from the concept of intertextuality. So, what is intertextuality? So, those are scholars that are studying pop culture refer to intertextuality as the reality wherein there is there are multiple ways of interpretation. Despite that you have this original intention, the audience are interpreting that media on different kinds of meanings and yeah, interpretations or they receive the message differently. And one issue regarding intertextuality is the translation of these Japanese popular cultural products from from the original language, which is Japanese, and to the language of the consumers. In our case, the translation of Japanese popular culture products from Japanese to Filipino. Dubbing is not simply the replacement of the words in one language with the equivalent words in another. Dubbing has political implications. First, translation. There are words in Japan, there are words in Japanese that are have very exclusive cultural and historical meaning that when it's translated in Filipino, it dilutes its impact and original message. Second, synchronization of the dialogue to the mouth movements of the character. Of course, there are some Japanese words that are short, but when it's translated into Filipino, from let's assume 2 to 3 syllables in Japanese, in Filipino, 4 to 5 syllables. And then non-consideration of literal translation. I think one good example here is the sharing of my friend before about Studio Ghibli films. If you're going to watch Studio Ghibli films, some of them you will have a hard time or at least be confused on on the development of the plot, the setting, because one of my friends told me that in order for you to appreciate Studio Ghibli, you need to have a an understanding of Japanese culture and society because those films use a lot of imagery, a lot of symbols in order for the director to convey its message. So there's this discrepancy in terms of number one, translation from Japanese to Filipino, and then second, discrepancy in terms of schema. Of course, these Japanese anime, manga, and shows were produced for the domestic Japanese audience. Of course, the use of imagery, symbols, and other literary devices are catered towards the schema or background knowledge of the Japanese people. On the other hand, tayo, us, must adjust to that. Some changes, the original dialogue that suit the cultural context of the target views are unavoidable, unfortunately. There are political and cultural problems in dubbing, such as no equivalent in the target language, and translation focuses on the cultural context of the target language. Let me give you this example of this anime. This is an old anime, but this is an anime from my youth days. This is Inuyasha. In Inuyasha, you have this the the the, the story revolves about the what we call Shikon Jewel. So if I'm not mistaken, that the Japanese translation is Shikonotama, and then in English it's Shikon Jewel, and then when they translated it into Filipino, I am actually surprised when I'm already matured enough, but when I'm still child, of course I'm amazed with how it was presented in ABS-CBN. But right now I'm always surprised because its translation is Shikon no Tama, Shikon Jewel, and then Banal na Hiyas. Nawala na yung essence, the essence of the Shikon, the cultural element or essence of Shikon was already diluted. And then this lower picture, in this group is a group of bandits in the story. And then in Japanese it's called Shichinintai. In in Japanese it's called Shichinintai. And then when it was translated, I forgot the English translation, but when it was already translated into Filipino, it's called Pitong Kilabot. So it's a little bit cringy for me, but yeah, those are the issues that we need to account. The exportation of Japanese popular culture to other states, like in Southeast Asia and in Western states, created layers of different audience communities. So we have two kinds of audience community. Number one is the passive audience community, and the other one is the avid fan community. The passive audience community are those persons or consumers who treat popular culture as a form of leisure and entertainment only. They listen or view or watch these popular culture products as a private activity, and they are grounded and local, and they have no interest to interact with their fellow fans. On the other hand, when we talk about avid fan communities, this refers to these refer to fans clubs that are existing across national spaces. Lately, because of internet, we have the creation of internet sub fans club and the creation of different anonymous stan accounts. I myself have a stan account. So let us now talk about the case of Japanese popular culture. So for Chua Beng Huat, the Japanese government failed to mobilize soft power resources to exercise more cultural influence, particularly utilizing Japanese popular culture during its heydays or the peak of its popularity, not only in Asia but in the Western states. For Chua Beng Huat, the reasons are the following. Number one, there's a lack of public policies to guide and regulate Japan's media industry. There is also a reluctance of the government to communicate with media industry. For Chua, this is because the Japanese policymakers, being part of the political elite, treat popular culture as inferior compared to traditional Japanese culture, like those kabuki shows, paintings, tea ceremonies, etc. Third, reluctance of the media sector to export pop culture due to lingering memories of Japan's wartime atrocities, particularly in mainland Southeast Asia. Fourth, the media industry is contented with the domestic market, that it failed to take advantage of the expanding bubble economy. And lastly, the circulation of Japan's popular culture in the 1990s is only driven by promoters and fans from Hong Kong and Taiwan. It's not really state-led during the 1990s. It's not yet state-led, or there's still already an institutionalized state support or government support. In the early 2000s, Japan, realizing the potential of popular culture for public diplomacy, Japan passed laws to increase financial and other administrative support to the media industry. Classic examples are the Fundamental Law for the Promotion of Culture and Arts in 2001, the development of the plan to promote Japanese film and image media, the first basic policy in the promotion of culture and arts in 2002, content promotion law in 2004, and the second basic policy in 2007. Other initiatives are those launched by METI, or the Ministry um, of External and Trade Initiatives. Wait, METI. Oh, no, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. So I forgot the meaning of METI, but this is related to trade. METI created the Creative Industries Promotion Office, and even Prime Minister or Foreign Minister, sorry, Foreign Minister, not Prime Minister, Foreign Minister Taro Aso designated anime and manga as part of Japan's diplomacy. In fact, one of the mascots used here is Doraemon. Foreign Minister Foreign Minister Taro Aso, who became later a prime minister, said the following: Anime and manga are consumed by ordinary people, not only in Japan. And since world opinion is shaped by ordinary people, we must invest in anime and manga since they are consumed by the ordinary people or by the foreign publics in other states. The promotion of anime and manga it led to the emergence of Japanese nationalists who hijacked the opportunity or the movement to impose their belief on the superiority of Japanese culture and the belief that Asian societies are now yearning for Japan. Okay, Japan coined its proliferation of its Japanese popular culture around the world, not because of a government sponsored term, but there's this guy named Douglas McGray who called the proliferation of Japanese popular culture around the world as what we call gross national cool, which led to the development of the term cool Japan. The products, or yeah, the goods that are involved in this cool Japan phenomenon around the world include anime, manga, music, video games, and gadgets. Anime has been the undoubtful champion of Japan's popular culture around the world. After the Second World War, as an example, American influence has surged in Japanese society. However, after Japan's rapid economic growth in the 1960s up to the 1980s, this is the one that I'm talking about the East Asian economic miracle, Japanese people suddenly became proud of their affluent society. Hence, there's this development of a new version of Japanese nationalism in which they viewed their own country, Japan, as a cultural superpower. In the upcoming slides, you will see here the crucial or the important role of leadership and institutions in terms of their support towards the media industry in order for a specific state to improve and to develop and employ meaningful and successful public diplomacy initiatives. So among the notable Japanese leaders who supported the use of Japanese popular culture for public diplomacy are Prime Minister Yoshiro Mori, Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi, Prime Minister Taro Aso, and Prime Minister Takeo Fukuda. In addition, as I have said, there is this crucial role of leadership and institutions. Without this support of the media industry, the use of popular culture in terms of public diplomacy efforts will be a little bit useless, and the efforts will be dependent on consumers, in which state objectives will not be met. Institutions created by Japan to further support the proliferation of pop culture for public diplomacy efforts are the Intellectual Property Headquarters. Here, the Ministry of Economics, Trade and Industry, METI, this is METI, the one I mentioned earlier, and the Japan External Trade Organization. We also have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Japan Foundation, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, and the Agency for Cultural Affairs. Please take note that the names of these departments or bureau were lifted on a specific publication which was published prior to this discussion, before this talk that I am delivering right now. Please take note that Possibly some of these ministries and agencies were already renamed, merged, or abolished with the new leadership of Japan, with as Japan welcomed its new prime minister. Prime minister. The presence of leadership support and institutional support led to the following events that further bolstered the activities of the media industry of Japan, like the Council on Movement of Peoples Across Borders organized Japan Manga Grand Prizes. Tokyo established the International Manga Award and first International Manga Award Executive to honor manga artists. In 2007, Japan and Singapore agreed to establish a Japan Center to disseminate Japanese pop culture in Southeast Asia, and Japan and Singapore also agreed to jointly produce TV programs that showcase information on Japanese culture and lifestyle for broadcast throughout Southeast Asia. So what are the issues with the spread of Cool Japan? Here are some of the issues that scholars noticed. Number one, they viewed that Japanese government's involvement or support to the Japanese media industry was already late. It was only in 2010 when the METI came up to a policy to institutionalize Cool Japan with product labels such as Made in Japan or Nippon brand. In 2013, a Cool Japan joint PPP, public-private partnership, was set up by providing risk capital to increase overseas demand for Japanese products from media and content, food and services, and fashion and lifestyle. And for some scholars, they said that failure to develop, Japan failed to develop a holistic policy to support key creative industries and resolve inter-industry problems such as poor wages and poor working conditions and extinction of Japanese films. Another issue faced by Cool Japan is marketability. So in the previous slide, there was an effort, a public-private partnership effort to revive consumer demand towards Japanese cultural products, and this is because of the stagnant market that emerged since 2016. While Japanese anime continues to garner success and awards abroad, Japanese cultural exports had peaked around 2016. Reasons include the rise of illegal websites, content piracy, yung mga torrent. Cool Japan marketing also shifted from trying to associate Japan with culture and values, but to only it shifted to purposes of mere consumption before you have cultural values and cultural images. Like for example, the movies or films from Studio Ghibli. Right now, the content genre are now dependent on the taste and preferences of consumers abroad. So it's mere consumption. Therefore, there was a question right now whether Japanese popular culture still possess this soft power potential. For Jerry Groot, it's difficult to determine because attraction is based on the whims of consumers. There's also this problematic dimension that the consumption of Japanese content, with the presence of different Japanese content, not all content are necessarily fit for soft power or public diplomacy. Our discussion since I started only revolved in the elements of anime, manga, TV drama, music, and gadgets. However, there are other elements of Japanese culture that are inappropriate for other viewers abroad, like for example, pornography, hentai, yaoi, doujinshi, etc. For the scholar Pang Erlam, global consumption of anime and manga is driven by market consumption and consumer taste, not by the Japanese state. In addition, the proliferation or the promotion of Cool Japan phenomenon also led to trade issues. Top markets or destinations of Cool Japan products are South Korea, United States, Taiwan, China, Canada, Thailand, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong. In 1996, a specific episode occurred when South Korea restricted the entrance of J-pop music. The ban was only lifted in 2000 as long as the music's lyrics are not in Japanese. Japan's promotion of its pop culture is regrettably, according to scholars, not me, is only one way. There was no channel established for a two-way exchange and interaction, and one reason is because of language barrier. Okay, let us now discuss the impact of Japanese pop culture on different Southeast Asian societies. Let's talk about this study conducted by Otsmagin towards university students in Hong Kong, Bangkok, and Seoul. You will see that these are what? These are locations that experienced Japanese colonialism during the Second World War. The results include exposure to Japanese culture, disseminate new and favorable images towards Japan. These images arouse feelings of affinity and sense of proximity. And these feelings are generational, implicit, inconsistent, and subject to different interpretations. Generational means that it belongs to, these feelings generated from exposure to Japanese popular culture belong to those generation who did not experience the hardships of Second World War and the atrocities of the Japanese soldiers during the Second World War. However, we need to have a nuanced view on these results that were mentioned. Number one, respondents do not maintain a singular cultural preference or possess narrow cultural patterns. They hold a variety of different cultural preferences for music, TV shows, etc. Despite that, exposure to Japanese popular culture generated positive feelings towards Japan, we need to account the reality that Southeast Asian society are also exposed to other cultural products such as South Korean pop culture, Chinese pop culture, and American pop culture. Respondents emphasized Japan's popular cultures as high quality and having advanced artistic level. 20% of the respondents indicated that it was much easier to become a fan of Japanese idol than Western celebrities. Why? It's because of cultural affinity. People from Thailand, Seoul, and Hong Kong can identify themselves more with the Japanese characters from a series or anime or manga that they are consuming because of physical features and cultural affinity. Next, this is another positive thing. Respondents can identify whether a pop culture product is from Japan or not. So at least the niche, Japan was able to get or capture the niche in terms of their public diplomacy objectives here. Here are the produced images of the Japanese state. Number one, developed, advanced, and modern. Second, people from Bangkok, Hong Kong, and Seoul started to like Japanese food after their exposure to Japanese pop culture, and there's also the emergence of feelings to visit Japan. Okay, the second point and the third image have national economic impacts towards Japan because it number one, if these persons like Japanese food, it created an additional market for Japanese restaurants and food industry in order for their products to find export. Sorry, in order for them to export their products and to find additional destinations. So it's an addition to the national economic objectives of Japan. Second, emergence of feelings to visit Japan. This is a plus points or a gain for Japanese tourism sector. So again, this is another plus points for Japan's national economic objectives. So yeah, you will see that public diplomacy's role is not only to generate positive feelings, positive feelings from the foreign public, from a foreign public. Most likely, when we talk about diplomacy, we talk about issue linkages that other one issue in a specific diplomatic engagement is connected to another issue from another specific diplomatic engagement. So in this case, the public diplomacy efforts not only creates positive image towards Japan, but also creates opportunities and avenues for Japan to pursue its economic diplomacy towards other states, particularly in Southeast Asia. Anime and prospects of Japan, travel of Hong Kong Gen Y consumers. This is a second study that provided the following results. Respondents are classified into four clusters, namely enthusiasts, interested, low viewers, and indifferent. The study failed to find any link between the level of anime consumption and increase in depth of understanding Japanese culture. All groups report a more or less neutral influence from their exposure to Japanese culture, and those who do pilgrimages to Japan are those who identify themselves as otaku. So basically, this study by Agyewa contradicts the findings of Otsmagin in his study in 2012. This study in 2018 by Agyewa and his or her colleagues contradict the findings. Another study that updates the findings of the impact of Japanese pop culture to different societies is a study conducted by Feng et al. That assessed the impact of Japanese manga to Chinese readers. The hypothesis that Japanese comics and anime influence the Chinese youth because of the reality that most Chinese do not like Chinese comics because they believe that Chinese comics are copycat from Japan. For the Chinese, according to the study of Feng et al., Japanese manga serves as the gold standard for comics in China. Respondents are disappointed that Chinese comics had devalued traditional Chinese culture because most Chinese artists neglected the usage of frame, angle, brushstrokes, and coloring. Results of this study, respondents indicated that Japanese manga as their venue for enlightenment to be exposed to other cultures and other knowledge systems around the world. The degree of influences of meaning and values depends, take note, on the reader's personal experience, background, acceptance, and compatibility to Chinese values. Chinese readers, this is where intertextuality enter. So it depends on the consumer on how they will interpret. So there's no such thing as uniform effect of public diplomacy towards foreign publics opinion towards a specific states. For example, look at this one. Chinese readers reject the themes of freedom and rebellion from Japanese manga. In fact, if you are going to look or read the study written by Feng et al., this refers to the manga of Attack on Titan, wherein Eren Yeager has been um, has been usually emphasizing in his lines the role of freedom and individualism. For the Chinese readers, they don't like that because they value the values of social harmony and obedience. Japanese manga content as their reference for their image of Japan. Lastly, this is a study on the impacts of Cool Japan to the Philippine society. While the Philippines has a big population of anime and manga fans, Japan does not view the Philippines as a cultural hub and destination for its content industry. Why? Because of some political economy dimensions. Number one, most Filipinos consume pirated anime. Second, most Filipinos do not buy printed manga. Worse, most Filipinos do not like reading. So, I am not going to um, well, wag tayo maglokohan. But I know that most of us, yes, I'm using the pronoun us, have watched anime on illicit websites. On those websites that are what? Free streaming, or downloaded from torrent sites. So, wag tayo maglokohan. And then, Filipinos do not buy printed manga. Of course, we are looking to what? Two different manga websites that are free despite that being illegal, and have this act constitutes violations of copyright and intellectual property. And then the last one is that the Filipino comic community views manga products as competition. Why? Because the most Filipinos do not like reading. Most Filipinos do not like even to buy books. Therefore, those local comic artists feel that the proliferation of manga in the internet, uh, uh, yeah, the proliferation of manga in the internet serves as a threat for their products, which is actually the case right now because of the what very few comic artists who were able to be successful in terms of their releases and issues. So yeah, that's my talk, and I am very happy that I was able to share some of my knowledge and some of the research available about the impact of Japanese popular culture to different societies, but here I particularly focus in Southeast Asia. If you want to know more about the readings and studies that I mentioned in this lecture, please feel free to send an email, and I am willing to provide copies of journal articles and books related to this topic that I discussed. Thank you.